He did live fast and die young, exploited most of his life. I wanted to find out what happened to him. How did he get into this situation?
It's a drama that played out like a Hollywood script, with a magician, his glamorous assistant and a movie star Chimp on a sinking yacht in the crocodile-inhabited waters just off the coast of northern Australia. Grainy black and white footage rediscovered in ABC archives shows a shipwrecked chimpanzee rescued from a sinking yacht to the shores of Arnhem Land's Elcho Island.
Oh no. You see the chain around his neck? So he was always chained because he was dangerous.
It's vision Brian Hubber had scoured the National Archives for in his research into this wild territory tale. Captivated by the urban myth of a chimpanzee in the remote territory, he spent years tracing the exploits of Jimmy the chimpanzee's life before the doomed voyage through the Pacific to Australia.
The thing that really got me working on it pretty hard was just the sort of poor treatment that poor Jimmy suffered over all those years. Jimmy had a hard life and I think he was exploited most of his life. I wanted to find out what happened to him. How did he get into this situation? That was the motivation at the start. So its film star arrives in a wooden cage. Cheetah, star of many a jungle epic, is rather a depraved monkey.
Searching old newspapers, he traced the chimpanzee's life back to Mozambique, where the animal was picked up by actor and magician John Calvert during the filming of his movie Dark Ventures. The chimpanzee was shipped to the Hollywood Hills, where he was given alcohol, cigarettes and a run of the house.
He terrorised the servants and he developed some pretty bad habits through that process. So he started to smoke and drink. He probably was a pet and a friend, but obviously he was also a great way to promote the shows. And he put out the story that Jimmy was actually Cheetah out of the Johnny Weissmuller Tarzan movies. And everyone believed this. It was just a tall story. Jimmy wasn't even born when the last of the Tarzan movies was made.
Purchasing a luxury yacht, John Calvert toured his magical troupe through the Pacific with Jimmy the chimpanzee a headline act.
There were animals, there were part of the show, plus the other people who were part of the magic shows. We did 3 weeks at the Manila Grand Opera House with a magic show, and that whole show went to Australia.
These precious days.
Pilita Corrales would go on to become a famous singer in Australia and overseas, but at the time she was a magician's assistant on the yacht.
I was the singer and I was the one helping him with the magic things that he would bring on stage.
The group had performed throughout the Asia-Pacific region before sailing into Australian waters, where the yacht started to take on water and had to be rescued by the Navy. It was an emergency that yacht owner John Calvert was grilled by the media for in Sydney.
If anyone doubts that the authenticity of the trouble that we were in, number one, ask the Navy. They were with us for 5 days with their own men on board and helping us bail water, pump water, and helping us make repairs and caulk the ship. Not only that, take a look at the photographs of the Sea Fox laying on her side at Elcho Island.
Everybody was interested. People stood on the wharf where it was moored and looked at it and waited for something to happen. And if nothing happened, they didn't mind. They just stood there looking at the yacht. The crew wandered around town and were seen and treated as celebrities. And Darwin thought of almost nothing else while the Sea Fox was in town.
Jerry Latin, who was second in command of the Navy rescue tugboat HMAS Emu, says there was no doubt the yacht was in trouble, but says it wasn't seaworthy and should never have been taken out on the water in that condition.
We were working about 100 miles off the coast at that time, roughly due north of Arnhem Land. Sea Fox had put out a distress call, and the Air Force had located them by conducting a visual search from the air, and we knew roughly where they were and we found them.
The events, partially captured on film, show the yacht taking on water in the crocodile-inhabited Arafura Sea. Polita Corrales can be seen jumping for joy as help arrives on the horizon.
Everything broke in the yacht, no water, no nothing, and the animals were suffering. So it was really hard. So we were floating for about 9 days.
She says the chimpanzee suffered the most, and with no food or water, he grew increasingly hard to manage.
He became very, very, already we would be afraid. We couldn't go near anymore. I think he wasn't used to be caged up like that because he'd go on stage back and forth.
The tape found in ABC archives show the days after the group was towed to safety. The small mission community on Elcho Island gathers for the spectacle as in flies Sir Edward Holstrom, trustee of Sydney's Taronga Zoo, to rescue the chimpanzee that for quarantine reasons remains in his cage. Dressed in a dark suit, Sir Edward Holstrom shares a cigarette with the chimpanzee before having him released from his cage. Boarding the aircraft, the chimpanzees help to light another cigarette and draws heavily on it.
He's in a sense rescued by a zoo where you expect him to get sort of slightly better treatment, and yet they're still encouraging his sort of smoking and his more circus type behaviour. The zoos in the 50s were completely different to what they are today.
There was a wild welcome for the chimpanzee at Taronga Zoo, but it wouldn't be home for long.
Jimmy was so socialised by this stage that he wasn't interested in breeding, and so he stayed there for about 3 years, and then they decided to offer him to other zoos, and the Perth Zoo took up that offer, and so Jimmy was shipped off to Perth. He lived there for 6 years in his own enclosure and was a great attraction. He lived till 1968 when he had a heart attack and died. And so 68, I reckon he was about 16 or 17 years of age. So he was really only in his teens still, because most chimps would live for 50 or 60 years. So he did live fast and die young, yeah.
The Perth Zoo committed the chimpanzee's body to research, and it remains part of a 64,000-strong collection of mammals at the West Australian Museum. Magician John Calvert returned to the United States, where he toured for decades more. He died in 2013, aged 102.